Whole sports all plays. Yeah. Whole sports all plays. Whole sports all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. Sport all plays, like working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Whole sports all plays.
What's happening? What's happening? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever time you actually check out this stream. Welcome to Real Talk. I'm your guy, Kenny Moore, and I got my brothers with me. I got my guy, Joe Flood. Welcome back. How you doing, man?
Right on. Glad to be back this week, man. I enjoyed it last week, so I came back for some more.
No doubt, no doubt. And Ray, I would ask if you're okay, but I already know the answer to that.
Yeah. It's your day, man. It's your day.
Man. So look, let's get right to it. So we always kick off the show with hot takes, and so I'll kick it off. I got a two-part hot take. My hot take is that the Cardinals will be in the market for a new head coach after this season, and that coach will be Sean Payton.
Whoa. You think they're going like steal him away from New Orleans? You think he would leave New Orleans?
Yeah, I think he sees the writing on the wall that run is kind of his time there is coming to an end, and his actually chance to contend, I think, is coming, like that window, that quote unquote championship window. I think it's closing because I don't think he's sure he has who he has in quarterback, because we know what unfortunately Jameis went down, and he's on a 1-year deal, so we don't even know what's gonna happen if he comes back. I mean, probably more than likely he comes back. But I just don't think I think he sees an opportunity in Arizona with Kyler Murray to be that difference maker on the offensive side of the ball. I just think Cliff Kingsbury is showing us that he's not the coach that they need to get them over the hump. We've seen them get off the fast starts and then they fade out these last couple of seasons. So I think they kind of see the writing on the wall, and they try to hit a home run and bring in Sean Payton.
Wow. I think we'll get into it. We have a topic about it later, but I don't think we have a Kingsbury issue. I think they got a quarterback problem and a talent problem at the wide receiver position, given the quarterback they got, but that would be something. I can't say it can't happen. I think there will be a lot of quarterbacks available. I would be shocked, but that would be something. I'll give you that.
Yeah, that is definitely a hot take. I think he probably will be on the hot seat. I agree with Ray. Like, man, they got injury issues. They started out real hot, then they got hurt. JJ Watt got hurt. D Hop is hurt. They just got hit by the injury bug now, and I think they just got to hold on and see. But I still think they get in the playoffs though. So I don't know if he gets fired if they go to the playoffs.
Yeah, I just think the way they're sliding now, especially if they don't make the playoffs, that would definitely ruin them. But they could. You're right. They do. They still could slide in. But yeah, that's my hot take. I think things are looking a little shaky in Arizona. But we'll get into that a little further on into the show. Joe, what you got? Give me a hot take.
My hot take is, it's not really a hot take because I think it's a lot of people expected it anyway. But I think this is Aaron Rodgers' season in Green Bay. They got the best record in the NFC right now, maybe the NFL. They've been to 2-3 straight NFC championship games, and I don't think they're gonna get it done again this year. You know what I mean? I can see them losing in the first round of the playoffs this year, and then that's gonna get Aaron Rodgers up out of there because, I mean, how many times he gonna get there and not get it done with the Mack? He done won one Super Bowl. Well, Bender won in his whole career, and he's breaking all these records and everything, but he's not getting them back there. Especially like I said, when you had 3 cracks at it, a couple of times the game was at home, and they losing NFC Championship games at home, so it's a lot of people expect it, but I think it's actually going to happen. If they do not make it to the Super Bowl, he's going to be out of there. Like I said, I believe they're going to lose in the first round of the playoffs, past the first round. So, yeah, that's mine.
Yeah, a lot of people are saying the same thing about the Cowboys, that they're going to lose in the first round. But, we'll get into that a little later on too. But I think I'm with you, though, in terms of it's now or never. Because, everything is set up for this to be Aaron Rodgers' last season in Green Bay. So he's definitely going to want to go out with a bang.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ray.
Man, I was trying to think. There was a lot that went on this last week, and I'm going to be honest. I think the hot take is this offseason, the Washington football team will have a new ownership group. I think more stuff is going to come out. I see the way the team is trending. We saw the fight that took place on the sideline, and they moved on from it. Nobody even told Ron Rivera to the end of the game. Like, it's just a mess. It's been a mess. I think the NFL is going to step in some form of fashion, and we're going to have a new ownership team and the DMV, which people have been asking for a long, long time.
Well, what do you? So you kind of alluded to some more news coming out. What do you think it's going to take? You think it's going to take almost like a Sterling situation for this to happen? Do you see something similar to that coming out in terms of the news, which would cause them to have a new owner?
I don't know that it's the Sterling I think what they're going to find out is that Bruce Allen had a lot to say. I think Daniel Snyder had a lot to say. And even worse is Daniel Snyder knew what Bruce Allen was saying and did nothing. And I think that's what's going to really get him caught up, is he oversaw all of the stuff that was going on. And truth be told, when this RG3 book comes out, if the information in there is validated, sexual assault, all that sexual misconduct, all of that, if it turns out to be true, I think that'll just be icing on the cake.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's definitely a lot in them emails and stuff that they looking at. That's why they did not want those emails to be released. And like I said, I was telling folks, man, John Gruden wasn't talking to himself.
That's right.
He wasn't emailing himself. There's
right.
a lot that they don't want to be uncovered in those emails and what's going on. So this very well could be the end of that ownership group in Washington. Well,
I'll say this, coming from a team that has an owner that's pretty meddling as well, I just think that at the end of the day, you got to, find your place and do your job, to use the Bill Belichick term. I think his interference with, how things are run in the organization, just the culture, we always talk about culture and just that culture there. It's always been drama, even from the changing the name. Like, he fought that for years before he finally relented, right, and changed the name. So it's just been always, a constant source of, dysfunction and drama. So that definitely wouldn't be that. I could definitely see that happening for sure. And that RG3 book, I didn't even know about that. I'm really curious to
it's called Surviving. It's called Surviving Washington.
Wow.
So
man,
he's marketing the heck out of it as a quote unquote tell all about
his Scottie Pippen rounds.
Yeah, he been out there. I don't like it. I think it's a little nasty, especially when just this past season he was trying to get back. And truth be told, Daniel Snyder tried to move heaven and earth for RG3 while he was here. Did they mismanage his injury? Sure. But I think a lot of that was him and his dad as much as it was ownership. Mike Shanahan would have been happy with him not playing. Trust me. So I'll be curious to know what comes out. I probably will not read it, or definitely not paying to read it. I'm not going to support that kind of behavior. But at the same time, if it happened, it happened. And a firsthand account can go a long way to getting the change we need and getting a stadium approved. I think that could be another piece. Is from a city standpoint, they're trying to get a new stadium, and they potentially can hold up any stadium funding until the ownership group changes as well. So I just think there's going to be pressure from all sides. I think the NFL is playing a dangerous game right now with these new protocols they're putting in place, and they're not going to need no more bad press. So I think Dan Snyder and even switching it over to his wife, that's not going to be good enough.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely everybody's gonna be tuned in to see how this thing plays out, because he's definitely been one of the guys that's been under the fire over the last few years in terms of owners that people have been as fond of. So this could definitely be a big shakeup. But I think the other point that's really important, and Joe, that you made, is that we got some more info from those emails that we need to find out, because like you said, there's surely more than those two people that was involved in that we're not hearing the whole story or the whole, whole fallout from that.
Right, definitely. And like I said, that's why they was fighting so hard to keep those from being released, because it's a lot of damaging information in them emails.
Yeah, and I think, Gruden's going – I feel like Gruden's going to burn it down. Like, he's not –
he already got a lawsuit coming, don't he?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So, he's like, I'm not taking all of this weight by myself. So, I think it's definitely more news that's going to come from that. So, we definitely got to stay tuned for that. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to the next topic. I definitely love this topic. Are the Cowboys now the NFC favorites? I'm gonna go to Joe first. Are the Cowboys the NFC favorites?
To me, they are. I would say yeah, because I think they kind of hot right now, and the only reason why I really am saying that because the Bucks got a lot of injuries going on in there with them right now, and the Packers. I just don't believe in the Packers. You should say the Packers, but I don't believe in the Packers because, like I said, I've seen this from them before. So I'm going to say the Cowboys are the favorites right now, just based on, they got the better defense. Dak looked good last night. Their defense, they got possibly the defensive player of the year in Michael Parsons. So they got it all going. And I don't even know if Jair Alexander is coming back to help them on their defense for the Packers. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys.
Fair enough. Ray, what you think?
No, I don't see it. I think they played Tampa really well earlier this year. We saw what Tampa did this past week with really one offensive weapon. For whatever reason, Brady was over Gronk, so he force-fed AB. So I still think until you beat that man, he is the man. I will say, like, they looked amazing yesterday. There was nothing really to complain about. They came out, they played to their level, not down to the level of their competition. They ran the ball, they threw the ball. Dak looked really good, but that was against, let's be honest, a subpar team with a bunch of people still out coming off a game when they just played on Tuesday night. So yeah, they got to Sunday night, but it just wasn't an ideal situation by any stretch. But no, they looked a lot. They looked the part. They got Arizona coming up. I would have said that was a measuring stick game 5 or 6 weeks ago, but today I don't see Arizona as really a threat to anybody. So as long as they come out and do what they got to do, I think they'll definitely position themselves. I think last week, I think they'll get the 1 seed. So there's no doubt in my mind really about that, just because of the rest of their schedule. And they will go out in the first round potentially, as long as they don't get somebody like the Eagles. Outside of the Eagles or Arizona, I think they can be beat. I think when the pressure is really on, I think that's when we'll see. They went into that game knowing they had already locked up the division, and they came out and played loose and free. So once the pressure get on, that's when we'll really see what Dallas is about. But as it stands, that was a great win. But I still got Tampa above them.
Fair enough. I mean, there's a little hate tinged in there, but we'll let it slide.
I will
No,
say
well,
it was a hard game to watch from start to by the second quarter. It was like, God dang, we couldn't do
Yeah,
nothing. Right. We couldn't
it
even
was
punt the
over early.
ball.
It was
yeah,
over early.
yeah, that was one of those games where every phase, it was just everything was clicking that game, whether it was offense, defense, special teams, everybody contributed, to the win. So it was just one of those kind of, perfect storm type of things where all of the phases of the game was clicking. So, I agree with you. You can't really get too caught up in this game because it wasn't really, the Washington, they're kind of fading. They're kind of playing out the string here. To me, I think the thing is, and what's up, Mike?
What's up, Ken?
Welcome. So the thing is that with Dallas is honestly, as a fan, I think we're still a year away. I think in the next 2 to 3 years that we should definitely be a Super Bowl contender. I think we have a chance to go on one of those runs where you have 2 out of the next 3 or something like that, where we're in the as one of the leading teams in the NFL. I think all of the pieces in terms of defensively are coming together. The offense hasn't been as consistent. With the offensive line, Tyron Smith is a concern for me because I'm not really a fan of Terrence Steele. So that scares. That's one of the things that concerns me in the playoffs is on that blind side, protecting Dak in the passing game. It's definitely. I don't think it's this year per se. I think maybe we win a game. We probably win that first round game and maybe lose in the second round or something like that. I think we're still a year away, but the pieces are definitely in place for us to be a contender for a long time. Unlike the Giants, who have been trashed for the last 5 years, and they're just going to be trashed for the next five more years. So, but that's the subject for another day. I just had to put that in because Freddie had to say something slick in the comments.
Hey,
So,
Kenny,
Mike, go ahead.
I have a question for you. You said You think they got it next year. I agree with you on the fact that Tampa may not be Tampa next year, and Green Bay won't be Green Bay next year, assuming Aaron Rodgers leaves. But I also know that y'all got to start paying people here shortly.
A lot of people.
So how do you envision that going?
I think Gallup. I think we'll lose Gallup. But I like the young pieces. His name is escaping me, but I think it's Hooker, the 17.
Malik?
Yeah, Malik Hooker, I think is his name. He seems like he's going to be a playmaker. My man, number 1, I'm terrible with names, but he's a playmaker also on the slot. What's his name?
Oh, I said it's all right, Kenny.
Yeah. Number 1, he's another wide receiver. So I think we'll be okay in terms of that wide receiver slot. And Dalton Schultz is a good safety valve in terms of the tight end. So I think we got enough offensively. And then, of course, you got the two-headed monsters at running back that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I just think that
you don't think Zeke's going anywhere anytime soon?
No,
they can't. They're not going to keep him on that same deal. He's going to have to restructure something.
I'm sure they will.
They're going to have to. Their production doesn't justify him being there on that salary.
Yeah, I'm sure he'll have to make some adjustments to his salary and free up some cap money. I'm sure they'll ask him to do some restructuring to help the team out. And thanks, Tony. That was Malik Turner and Cedric Wilson for those 2 wide receivers. I was trying to think of their names. But yeah, I just think, and also we're gonna have to. I think we're gonna have to address the left tackle situation because I think Tyron Smith, can't stay healthy. So I think they're going to have to address that in the draft as well. So there's going to be some pieces that are going to have to be replaced or some adjustments that have to be made. Potentially we may lose our offensive and defensive coordinator because they're 2 hot commodities right now. So they may get one of those head coaching jobs. So there's going to be a couple of things that are going to have to, in terms of keeping this thing going and, building on what we have. But I just think the foundation is so solid, and especially on the defensive side, in terms of, because at the end of the day, if you could get to the pass, you got a chance. And we got 3 guys when healthy that can really get to the quarterback. And you can build your team around that. And then you got a ball hawk on the outside, in terms of Diggs. So you got some really good pieces that you could build on. So I think it's one of those things where in the next couple of years, you're going to have to hear from the Dallas Cowboys. What do you think, Mike? Are the Cowboys the team to beat in the NFC right now?
In the East or in general?
In the NFC, total NFC. Are they the favorites?
You know, I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no right now. Just because if we're talking about the playoffs, like right now, sure. Right now, sure. But if we're talking about the playoffs, if the Cam Akers news is legit and Sean McVay can actually have a running game, I think that's going to make the defense play a lot better because they're not going to have to be on the field the entire game. It's going to take off a lot of pressure off of Matthew Stafford, who's been struggling as of late. Tampa cannot catch a break to save their life. I know Victor, he keeps saying, oh, it's just a regular season. Who cares? 2 more weeks, big dog. 2 more weeks, and you're going to have to start to care. Godwin's out. Evans just entered protocols, and he's still banged up. Gronk is
Fournette banged up.
Always a question mark. Fournette's banged up. You really have no idea. But a big name on their defense got hit up today. He's banged up. So there's going to be a lot of question marks that go into. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of questions that go into Tampa, going into the playoffs. Are these guys going to be ready? Are they physically fit enough to be able to play Super Bowl caliber type football? We know they can do it, but are their bodies there? Are they in routine? Are they going to be able to do it? Jason Garrett could go back.
No, thanks.
Damien, why do you say the things you do?
We're good on that.
But it's definitely something to me where I think the Cowboys, futuristic-wise, are definitely there, and Michael Gallup will not make a difference whether he's there or he's not. So I think it's going to be perfectly fine with or without him. I love Michael Gallup, but the way CD's going, the way Amari Cooper's doing in his trajectory, the only replacement you would need is a guy who can catch the ball, and just be there and be efficient and have somewhat consistent numbers. You don't need a top tier guy because you already have 2 respected, one of the best route runners in Amari Cooper when healthy. And then you have CD Lamb, who's emerging as a top 10, top 15 young wide receiver. And I make sure I use that keyword young, because I saw Ray's eyes flicker just a little bit really quick. But I make sure I say young on the end of that because I definitely think where he's not there right now, he will be very soon. And with Zeke, yeah, I'm not gonna help you out with that one, Kenny. I'm gonna have to hold you to that. Like that's looking pretty bad, especially with how good Pollard is. It's looking pretty rough right now.
But I think it's part of it because
Kenny, I think I have COVID. And I think I'm in a better situation than y'all are with Ezekiel Elliott right now.
No, I mean, I understand. I understand, everybody's saying that. But there was a stretch during the season before he got banged up where he put together 2 or 3 100-yard games. So it wasn't like –
that's the thing.
That's all you're getting.
Like Mack. Right now –
but also, here's my other point, is that what makes it work is that you have that 2-headed monster because – in the NFL, for most successful teams, they have a 2-headed running game.
Right.
So as long as I have Pollard along with Zeke, right. I think we'd be in trouble if we only had to count on Zeke. I would see your point if it was just where you had to count on Zeke.
My thing is,
we have Pollard. I think that helps.
Right.
Sure.
But my thing is when I look at the Chicago Bears right now, David Montgomery's on a rookie deal, and Khalil Herbert gave us several 100-yard gains this year, and he's a 6th-round pick. You don't pay this guy $90+ million to give you a couple 100-yard games.
Oh no!
That's
no
where
question.
the problem. That's where the problem is for me.
But that's what's going to, that's the business side. So
they
have the leverage now to where they can go to him and say, we gotta, renegotiate, or we gotta, make some adjustments to this contract.
And unfortunately, I think the Cowboys were one of the last teams to be that. I don't see that ever happening again, to where a running back really gets that type of money. There's going to be the very rare cases where they do. Those 2-dimensional type guys, they could pass the ball, they could catch the ball, they could run.
Has Henry been signed?
Yeah, Henry got big money.
Henry got big money, but not enough money to what he's actually doing. You know what I mean? Like, If he had the back-to-back 2,000-yard seasons, we're talking about a whole different contract. But really, the way I'm looking at it now is we're starting to see, especially with Saquon Barkley, and even Alvin Kamara. You see Dalvin Cook, Aaron Jones, Ezekiel Elliott. They're not staying healthy. There's a window with, especially nowadays. Not to say that the game is a lot more physical because it's not. But you're really starting to see just a really downplay of just backs having that longevity of a career. The last Bear I remember lasting more than 4 years was Matt Forte. And that's way back in 2016 is when that ended. So you're starting to see that plethora of taking a chance on the guys from no-name schools, taking a chance on 6th round, 7th round picks, and it actually works out in your favor. Look at A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon wasn't looked at. It was Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and all these other guys. A.J. Dillon just comes out of the woodwork and is like, you know what, I'm falling out. I'm this guy. And you don't have to pay him anything. You really don't for 4 years. And they paid Aaron Jones for what? You have, what's his name? Madison out of the Vikings. He's been more productive than Dalvin Cook. Sure, Dalvin Cook rushes for 200 yards, but then he misses 5 or 6 games. So when I look at it like that, I think they're going to have to restructure that or just cut their losses with Zeke at some point because, like you said, Micah Parsons isn't going to come cheap. And the way Diggs is playing, unfortunately, I think he will get a lot of money just because of the interceptions alone. But that boy is not a good corner. But that's a conversation for a different day. But it's definitely something to me where I think you're going to have to pay a lot of guys, and I think Zeke is going to get in the way of that.
Yeah, the decisions will definitely be made, and this offseason will be interesting regardless of how things turn out in the playoffs. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. All right, let's move to the next topic. I'm going to throw this one to Ray since it's regarding his team. Is it a big deal that the Washington football team players were fighting on the sideline last night? We kind of touched on it a little bit, but let's dig a little deeper into it. What do you think, Ray? Is it a big deal?
I don't. Yes, it's obviously a big deal. It was a primetime game. It's press. It's headlines, and it's for all the wrong reasons. It's not what you want to see. Personally, I think if Jonathan Allen wanted to rock him, he could have rocked him. I think he missed on purpose to send a message like, "Don't play with me." Jonathan Allen, for y'all, maybe you don't know, he was just, I think this past week, he was just honored as like the Walter Payton Man of the Year or whatever. Like he just got like a huge acknowledgement for his community work. I follow him on social media, pretty even kill, low-key guy. And if you watch the exchange, he was just sitting there bobbing his head. He was sitting there bobbing his head. He was chilling. Like, all right, you mad? I'm cool. I'm good. He's a captain. So like he's chilling. And then when Payne put his finger in his face, that's when he crossed the line. And again, I think it could have been a lot worse if Allen wanted it to be worse, but he had to send a message like, don't play with me, but we still brothers. We went to school together. I know you. And he had enough presence of mind to miss that punch. I think the bigger issue is the fact that nobody told Ron Rivera until the end of the game. That lets me know that there's a breakdown in communication somewhere. It could be a lack of respect. It could be something, but that's not okay. That the coach has to know about that. They went out and they continued to play next to each other without incident. They're both really talented. I think Allen might have just got paid, if I remember correctly. But no, it's definitely a big deal. Rivalry game sends all the wrong messages. I think that's kind of one of those things where that's kind of the finale to your season. That was once that happened, it was like, all right, we're in start over mode for next year. We're preparing for next year. We'll start. Well, they've already been playing a bunch of nobodies because can't nobody stay healthy, and COVID has been a big issue. But it was really disappointing to see. That's my squad. I love them, but that can't happen. It's unacceptable, and I put a lot of it on Payne. Like you can't do that. Like don't touch another man, especially in those circumstances where everything is going wrong. Like you can't do nothing right. Dallas is pulling off option fumbles. There was a handoff to Zeke that fumbled, came right back to him. Like it was the ball was always bouncing towards Dallas. Heineke put up a terrible Heineke performance. Coming off a short week, I just think there was a lot going on. But nah, definitely it's a deal. I think they'll move past it. They both did their post-game interviews, handled it like professionals. And we'll see what happens next.
So do you think that this could perhaps put Ron Rivera on a hot seat, this issue?
I do. I think he's been on, for me as a fan, he's been on the hot seat. I've never been a huge fan of his. But I do think how he navigates this and how he handles it over these next I believe 2 games are left, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3.
Yes, 2. Yes,
2.
2 games.
I think if they're competitive in these next 2, that's great. If not, and they end up at 5-12, I think, or 6-11, I think we'd be. Then they're gonna have a long look.
Yeah,
and
6-11 if you lose the next 2.
And if what I believe is going to happen with the ownership group, I definitely could see him getting up out of there. I think there'll be a number of options available. You got to fix the quarterback position, and I think that'll put, with coaches getting fired, I think it puts pressure on Jerry Jones, to be perfectly honest. He's going to have to make a decision. Are you sticking with Mike McCarthy, or are you going to fire McCarthy and promote more? So I think that's going to be an interesting storyline for me. I believe somebody like us would definitely look to go young. We've had some young coordinators in the past come in, but we let them get away. I like what Kellen Moore has done in Dallas. Obviously, it looks a lot easier when you got a ton of talent everywhere, but I think it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I think I don't think the fight's a big deal because that happens on the sideline all the time. You have, emotions get hot, it's an emotional game. So, these things happen from time to time. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But I just think it's a microcosm of the whole season in terms of, it's just been one of those one thing after another, starting at the beginning of the season, you have, the Ryan Fitzpatrick go down and things just kind of went downhill. You had the questions around, should they bring back Cam Newton? Should Rivera reunite with Cam Newton, I should say. And it's just been, then, you had Chase Young go down. So it's just been one of those years where what can go wrong will go wrong. They like to use that term with the Cowboys, but it's been in the same situation with the Washington football team. So I to your point, I think the whole thing was all about the point and putting the finger. You don't put your finger in a man's face. Like, that's a no. That's always gonna trigger, and that's always gonna set somebody off. And I don't think he tried to miss. I just think he missed. I think he was definitely trying to put his lights out. It was one of those situations like with Shaq, where he, years back in the day, where he just tried to, he basically tried to end Brad Miller's life, and he just missed. So I just think when it was just so quick, and because you could see him still on the sideline, like the dude, like even after it happened, he was still sitting there on the sideline, like almost shaking. So I think it definitely. It could have went really bad, but I think the biggest point that you make that's really important is the fact that the communication breakdown in terms of this not getting to Ron Rivera, like that says a lot about how that staff is in terms of them being on the same page. Like, that's one of those things where everything is already going. This game is already starting to roll downhill in terms of going in the wrong direction. And that's one of those things where you bring the head coach in and everybody comes together, even on the defensive side of the ball, where the defense comes together and we have a conversation and we get this thing back on track. Because to me, you not talking to the head coach means that you basically just saying that it is what it is, and we're not trying to make any attempts to try to rectify the situation. So to me, that speaks to a bigger problem. So I think you make a great point about that. So this could be one of those things that could be one of the things that they look at in terms of why they wind up moving on from Ron Rivera. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, for sure. All right, so let's move to another team that had a rough week, the New England Patriots. It was a statement game. This is one of the rematch between them and the Bulls. We saw how close that game was up in Buffalo, and the weather and all those things that were a factor. And we come to New England, and Buffalo goes to New England and gets the win against the New England Patriots. Are the New England Patriots frauds? And I'm going to go first on this one. I'm not going to say that they're frauds. I just think they kind of I think what my concerns were about the team, they kind of showed themselves. And so I think that issue of the offense being, not being able to play from behind, I think that issue raised itself and showed itself. And I think that's what we saw on yesterday in terms of they don't trust at the end. The biggest takeaway from this is that Bill Belichick does not trust Mac Jones to win ball games for him. He only trusts him to be a game manager. And the defense is legit. The defense, but on yesterday they had problems getting off the field. The Buffalo Bills did not punt that entire game, so the defense didn't step up and help out the offense on their side of the ball. So I don't know if I wouldn't say that they're frauds. I think it just showed that they're still, they still got some work to do. And especially on the offensive side, to me, the biggest thing is they don't have enough skill. They don't have enough weapons in terms of skill position. Probably their best position or the strongest unit is their tight end unit. And, in terms of those outside weapons, I got questions about those outside receivers. So I think that's the thing they're going to have to address in the offseason. I think their running game is pretty solid. But I think outside, they don't have that guy that you have to game plan for, that guy that you have to roll coverages to. And I think that's what's really hurting them in the long run. What do you think, Ray?
I agree really with your points, especially the last point about not having that guy. However, I would say in Bill's offense, a lot of times they haven't needed that guy. The problem is you don't have Tom Brady back there. I think we saw even in that Buffalo game, and I think we was doing the show when it was on. We kind of laughed and were surprised by it, but that to me said he don't trust this guy. Mm-hmm. Coming out, he didn't have the arm strength to push the ball down the field, and he's similar to Taylor Heineke. He can't throw the ball down the field accurately. He just doesn't have the arm strength to get it there. He doesn't play with enough anticipation, and because of the lack of talent, they don't get enough separation. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to run the ball. You have to play from ahead. And I guess we got fooled, or they just weren't as good, or Buffalo was better, because last week or week before last, they were able to build a comeback and make it competitive. And to a certain extent, they did that again this week. But I didn't really ever doubt that Buffalo was in a lot of danger in this past week. So as far as frauds, I say yes, because there was talk of them getting the 1 seed. There was talk of them being in the being in the Super Bowl or making any kind of run. And that quarterback play shows me they're not capable, especially if they have to go on the road to an Arrowhead. If they have to go back to Buffalo, I don't think that's going to be in the best interest. If they have to play a team like Tennessee, who keeps finding ways to win, Indianapolis is hitting their stride, and they already lost to them too. So I think the teams that they would likely play, they haven't shown an ability to beat. And so I think it would be heavily reliant upon the defense. And this past week, they just didn't get it done. I think they will bounce back. I don't think we'll get that kind of performance again. I think Bill will get them ready for this next 2 games. But as far as a championship contender, I don't think that they're that anymore.
Yeah. So it made me think of another question. So if we're saying the Patriots are frauds, are the Colts contenders?
I think so. I said a while back I thought that they would win that division, and Tennessee has quote unquote righted the ship or managed to stay ahead of them. Mm-hmm. I have never really been the biggest Carson Wentz fan, but he's playing good football. Like, he's not blowing you away. He's not wowing you with his performances, but he's playing good, solid football. He's not making mistakes. Like I think it was the Rams game when he had that horrible interception. He's playing within the system. They're calling a good ball game for him. They're another team I don't think can afford to get down by a lot. Exactly. But they can take the air out of the ball. They can control pace. They have a methodical offense. So no, I think I would say they're more of a contender at this point than New England. I think they'll have a hard time if it gets into a shootout. But they have some weapons too. So I think if they have to do that, Wentz has the arm strength to throw the ball in any weather. He's played in Philly. He's played in North Dakota. So I don't think weather would be a huge issue for him. So I think they have the right pieces. They finally really got healthy, which is probably the biggest piece to all of this. I think it'll be a war of attrition of whoever can stay the healthiest. I think we'll have a great shot at going far. But I think they're real. I think they're for real.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of, of course they got the running game, they got the defense. A lot of people a lot of people don't talk a lot about that Indianapolis defense, but they really got some really good pieces there from the Forrest Buckner, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the difference between them the difference between these two teams is one, the skill position talent in terms of Indianapolis is a lot better than New England. I'd probably take New England's D over Indianapolis D, but offensively, I don't think it's close. So I think that's where the difference is, where Indianapolis can, they could probably, be up on it. You could kind of look at them in terms of being a decent defensive, not a great defense. Whereas the Patriots really rely on that defense to hold teams down. And I think while you don't want to get into a shootout with Carson Wentz, you got your trust issues with him, they do have the offensive talent to where they could put points on the board if they had to. You just don't want them to. I think that's what the difference is where they could if they wanted to. I just don't think that the Patriots can if they had to.
Yeah, I definitely don't think if you need to open it up with New England, the talent's not there at really any position on the offense.
Yeah, exactly.
And even the tight ends are good, but they're not going to beat you over the top.
Exactly.
I think they got Harry back. Aguilar in years past, I think last year he proved he can be a semi-decent deep threat, but they can't use him for that because Mack can't get the ball there.
Can't get down the field. Yeah.
I think that'll be a problem for them that they're gonna run into.
Yeah, for sure. So here we go to our last NFL topic. Here's another team that's struggling. Well, they're really struggling right now. And we talked about them a little bit in the beginning of the show, but are the Cardinals done? I'm going to say yes. Kind of, in line with my hot take. I think they're just on one of those slides to where they're just not going to be able to put this to get this thing back on track. So I think that's going to be the issue in terms of them being able to. And I think you hit it as well in terms of the offensive talent, in terms of the skill position talent. I think that's, using D-Hop is a huge loss. And no more, it's probably the biggest loss that any team could have taken in terms of Arizona, because they rely on him so much in terms of the rolling of the coverages to him, and it opens up things for the other guys and makes life easier for Kyler Murray. So I think that they're going to really struggle, and they're just going to limp into the finish line, and they may split these next two games. They'll probably lose to Dallas and then win that last game, and they may need some help getting in. So we'll see how it plays out. But I think that they're in trouble. What do you think?
No, 100%. Similar premise to that I had with New England. I think they've already clinched the playoff berth, so that's great. Personally, I would look to potentially tank and try and get the matchup with Dallas. Or maybe LA. They don't want to go to Tampa. I can promise you they don't want to go to Tampa. LA being an in-division rival, they're familiar with them. So I think they could go there and would be perfectly fine. But I think the team you really want to go see is Dallas. And I would rest my players. James Conner, granted I have him in fantasy and I really could use him these last couple of weeks, but I think that's probably the best solution for them. But I think at the two biggest positions of quarterback and coach, I think they'll be the worst tandem in the playoffs from the NFC. And that's including if San Francisco gets in. I don't have much love or respect for Jimmy G, but he has gotten the team to a Super Bowl before. And I definitely trust Kyle Shanahan more than Kingsbury. Philly's kind of a wild card. If they can sneak in, I have no faith in them. Although they've been running the ball great. They've been doing it against pretty subpar talent. So I'm not – Jalen Hurts doesn't impress me if, they went that direction. So, yeah, man, it's I think it's unfortunate based on who they match up with. I just think it's a huge drop-off from the top 4 seeds to the rest of whoever would be in the NFC playoffs. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I don't think you fire Kingsbury. I think you have another year to build. You kind of get the injury excuse. You lost your best player, 2 of them. People forget J.J. Watt was out, and although he's not the J.J. Watt of old, he helped Chandler Jones a lot. As far as taking some pressure off him, I think having D-Hop there he opens everything up for A.J. Green, for Zach Ertz, and for Christian Kirk that isn't there and has been out. And really, since he's been nicked, they haven't looked like the same team. He wasn't putting up extraordinary numbers, but at least he was a distraction enough that allowed them to do everything else. And without him, they look like a completely different team. Murray's been taking some bad sacks. He's been getting hit. He had a great run, but after that, he didn't do a lot. So I think definitely they're in trouble. I think they're one and done. They get in and go home, but
one and done.
It's not a terrible season, but I think it's very disappointing based on how they started.
Yeah, I think to your point that the fact that they clinched the playoffs, which I didn't, I just saw that probably will save Cliff Kingsbury's job. But to me, I just don't know. I just don't know if they have a sustainable model in terms of how they play offense. It just seems like, and I don't know if it's the system, the air raid or whatever the case may be. I don't know if it's because of Kyler Murray, because of his size. I don't know if it's a combination of the two, but it just seems like they just don't have a sustainable sustainable culture. I guess that's the term I'm looking for, to be consistently winning in the NFL. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because, if there's a one and done, and I saw your Suggs, that's Pete Carroll. I think he is going to be done at the end of this season. I said that before the season started, that this thing was going to blow up and that that this was the end of the line for everything. That they were going to be bad and that Pete Carroll was going to be out of there. He could be another guy that they may look at. I just think, honestly, with the Cardinals, I think they're going to look at whether or not there's another level that they could get to and whether Cliff Kingsbury is the coach that could get them to that level. And I think that's what's going to base their decision on in terms of how they move forward.
I agree. I'm always kind of torn with some of these knee-jerk reactions, and I think sometimes you just got to ride with people. Like New England didn't look great last year. This year they looked significantly different when things began to turn around. I think if you're Seattle, I think it's easy to fire someone. I think it's hard to replace someone. So yeah, we're going to fire Pete Carroll. Great. Who are you going to go get that's going to be equal to that, or that you feel with that roster can get you where you need to go, especially without Russell Wilson? If he leaves, that's one thing, but firing him when Russ is likely gone, I don't think a veteran quarterback is going to want to come there under a new coach. So I think it's a marketing game as well. If you're trying to recruit talent to the Pacific Northwest, like that luster of the 12 and the Legion of Boom is gone. So if you have nothing there other than I think Snyder's the GM, I think it's a mistake firing the head coach until you can try and get some more talent and make it a more appealing job, because Vegas is an appealing job. Washington could be an appealing job. New York said that they're bringing the Giants said they're bringing someone back, but New York's always going to be an appealing job. So there's going to be some competition for some jobs. And if you let Pete Carroll go, I don't know that you're going to have a better option available to you unless you start that process now and you get some assurances. But he's not going to leave. The USC job has already been filled, so I don't think that's a real concern of him leaving. But firing Pete Carroll, I do not think is the answer to fixing things in Seattle.
Well, I think the reason why you do that is because I think it's time for them to rebuild. I think they're going to need to blow it up and start over and rebuild because, like you said, the Legion of Boom, those days are over with. They've been Russell Wilson's basically been running for his life the last 2 or 3 years. So I just think they need to really build that team from the ground up, starting with that offensive line, and then bringing in I think you bring in a young coach, you bring in a young quarterback, and you try to build this team, rebuild this team from the ground up, because it's not a contender anymore. Like I think the writing is on. That's why I think Carroll will be out of there, because he sees the writing on the wall. Like, this is going to be a long road of recovery, a long road of rebuilding. And I think he's just too old for that. No disrespect, but I just don't think he has the energy for that. I think he'll rather go into a situation where he can try to make one more run to the Super Bowl. So while they may not fire him, I think he steps down and says that, I'm not the guy to move forward with, and I'm going to step aside to give somebody else the opportunity to rebuild this team.
So do you think he would take a buyout, or he would just retire? How do you think
quote unquote retire or step down, or resign, something along those lines. And then they try to move in a different direction and try to build with the young coach, and just totally turn that team back around, get it back on the right track. Yeah, I hear you. I just think that the window's closed. Like, Russell,
I think we definitely agree on that. I don't know if a better option currently exists. I do think.
I agree with you. I don't think it's a better option. I think they go the route of getting a young guy that they could groom, and kind of almost like a Mike Tomlin type of thing, where they get a young guy, maybe somebody that's off the radar that you didn't expect to get into that role, like when they first brought Mike Tomlin into the Steelers, that type of guy, and see if they can find that diamond in the rough, and then find it that they could build with.
Yeah, I think the difficult part for them will also be without Russ. And I see somebody had in the comments, the Cardinals don't have an identity. Without Russ, I don't think Seattle has an identity.
That's true.
So I think it's going to – I don't know what type of coach you would even want to go get, because they can't really run the ball. They don't have a great offensive line to throw it a bunch. The defense is, middle of the road. Yeah, exactly. So I think it'd be very interesting to see. I think the difference if Arizona job becomes available, you do have some pieces there. The key would be to go get, I think, a defensive coach and a good offensive coordinator. I don't think offense is necessarily their problem. Yeah. I personally think quarterback is their problem, but I think you can manage that better. And I can even see if that happened, Pete Carroll going down there and working with Kyler Murray, similar to what he did with Russ as well. I think it'd be a similar fit. It'd be a definitely great name that would bring cachet. And I think he could help guide Kyler through some things based on his experiences. But I think it's hard to fire a coach that did go to the playoffs. But I think this is the last year of his deal too. Or he might have one more. So it would be easier to get off of him if they wanted to go in a different direction.
Yeah, let me look that up real quick. That's interesting.
I know he signed a 4-year deal. So I think this is his last year coming up. I think he might be in his third, and he got one more after this year, but you can get out of that
20, last year. This is 20. Let's see. Yeah, in 2018. Yeah, so he's here through 2021. So I think this is it. Let's see. Hold on. Let me just make sure. Yeah, this is it. So it all lines up for them to really move in different directions. So we got to keep an eye on that. The offseason is, that's one of the things. The NFL offseason is always crazy, because you got a whole bunch of activity in terms between the head coach openings, draft, combine, free agency, all that stuff. It's just a non-ending news cycle. Which keeps us on the air, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for it. It keeps things interesting.
No doubt.
So, yeah, I think the other piece to that, though, we talked about Sean Payton leaving. I think New Orleans looks real appealing to Russell Wilson. Not maybe Sierra, but what Kamara, getting
New Orleans is a poppin' town, though, so she might dig it. It's definitely more happening in Seattle.
Have a good time.
That's what I mean.
So I think that I would be very interested to see. And he, they have the Taysom Hill kind of guy. So he's used to having kind of a semi-mobile quarterback. I think he'd be a great replacement for Drew Brees in that area. He's a good community guy. And they got talent. I think they'll get Mike Thomas back. He had the year off. Callaway solid. Kamara. I think that would be ideal. Either Wilson or Rodgers, I think, will end up in New Orleans next year.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's another thing, the whole quarterback carousel, to see how that plays out. All right, let's move to NBA. Let's slide over to the NBA. Go ahead, Ray. Give me your NBA hot take.
I wanted to come on and just completely talk trash about the Lakers, but they've done that enough for me. That doesn't need to be said. So this is a hot take, but it shouldn't be a hot take. But coming off an NBA Finals and NBA Finals MVP and regular season MVPs, I think Giannis is underrated. I don't know what is happening in the NBA or why no one wants to talk about him or mention him. I've heard a ton of Curry, rightfully so. I've heard a ton of Lakers talk, understandably so. I've heard a bunch of Kevin Durant talk, rightfully so. I've heard a bunch of DeMar DeRozan talk, rightfully so. But somehow, some way, people have seemed to have forgotten who Giannis is and what he represents. And the other night, when you talk about playing both ends of the ball, that block to seal the game, unlike LeBron, who got dunked on to seal the game,
man,
that's the dichotomy between those two at this point. And I didn't hear anybody talking about it necessarily on Talk TV. I didn't hear anybody going crazy, but that was an amazing defensive play.
Absolutely.
And at a clutch moment.
For sure.
And so I'm not sure why people, I don't know if it's Giannis fatigue because he's constantly giving you these huge numbers, but he's played phenomenal this year when he's been healthy. He was out for a couple games, I think, because of COVID, but he has them right in the hunt. I think they will likely end the year because of health as the 1 seed again in the East. And hey, he's playing really well. And I don't think he's getting enough credit for how well he's playing this year.
I think that's a great point. And honestly, I could see the rematch between them and Brooklyn happening again, but the only difference is it'll be in the Eastern Conference Finals as opposed to in the second round. So, I think Giannis is, and the thing about it, man, what I love about Giannis is that since he's come into the league, you just seen him gradually get better and better and better. You know, whether it's with his body, you know, he came in like looking like KD. Now this dude is yoked up and almost bullying. He's bullying guys on the court. And, you know, in terms of even his jump shot, like, you know, there have been questions over the last couple of seasons about his jump shot. And you've seen that get better and better as the years has gone on. And the scary thing is I don't think we've actually seen, he's just getting to his peak and getting to, you know, his prime. And so I think there's another level that this guy can get to. So I think it's going to be scary to see, you know, how good Giannis winds up being. So I think you make a great point that he definitely needs to get talked about more. My hot take is actually on the Lakers. You know, since Freddie's not on tonight, I'm gonna do this hot take.
We miss you. If I could come on after that Washington game, you should have found a way. You need to call off or something. You should have been here.
That's right. But I got you, Freddie. I got you. Russell Westbrook is going to come off the bench after the All-Star break. They're going to move him to the bench.
Ooh.
I think it's one of those situations where kind of similar to Kemba Walker, and we'll get into him a little later on in the show. One of those things to get his attention. I think they're going to have to do something to get his attention. Not only that, also I think to kind of take a little pressure off him, because I think a lot of this is coming from him pressing. Like he wants to do so well because he's back home, and I think he's pressing a lot. And I think that's what's causing. I think that's part of the reason why he's struggling is that he's pressing and trying too hard to make plays. And that's part of Russell's personality is that he's always going to go 100 miles an hour, and he's always going to be in attack mode. And I think that's going to giving him a chance to see the game from the bench or kind of slow him down a little bit and take a little pressure off of him and then kind of, you know, get out there with the second unit. Because I think the biggest thing is that they saw was on Christmas, is that they made that run in the second half when he was on the bench. So I think that that's going to be one of those things. I think it'll be gradual where they'll start with him not closing games. And then once AD comes back, I think they put the ball back in LeBron's hands and make him the facilitator, and then bring Melo and Russ off the bench as that energizers to the second unit to give you that boost of energy off the bench, and see if that can get him going. So that's my hot take. That's my hot take for the NBA.
Yeah, I think that where I gotta definitely disagree with you, and I was trying to find, because they talked to him about, they said something to him, and I can't find the screen grab of it, of his statement. But he doesn't get it. Like we joked earlier when he said the statement about winning, and how he's just basically happy to be here. But one, I think Bron is enabling him by not holding him responsible to his gameplay. And I really wish I could find the quote.
The 25-15-15 thing?
Yeah. Well, basically, he's like, I'm fine. Like, I'm doing what I do. It goes, he says, honestly, I think I've been fine. When that's your mindset, it's hard for me to expect people to bench him because somebody's not telling them you're not fine.
That's my point. Is that that's the only way to tell him that he's not fine.
The only person that can go to him is Bron. And Bron, for whatever reason,
he's not that guy. He's not that type of guy.
He doesn't seem like he's willing to do that. Like, he'll trade a bunch of rookies, but when it comes to talking to vets, we remember what happened with Delonte West. He ended up getting him. He got him traded, but he's not. He's talking. I'm gonna tell you exactly what's happening. Because, just going back from the Cleveland days and just knowing a little bit because Kyrie's family. Like, he's talking about him, but he's just not talking to him. He's talking to the front office. So all the things that he's saying, all the issues that he's having with, if any issues he's having with Russ, he's talking to Rob Pelinka and those guys in the front office. He's not talking to Russ. So you think LeBron would, and quote unquote, smile in Russ's face, but then get him traded?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think he would get him traded, but I don't think they would necessarily get him traded, because I think they're stuck with him. But I'm pretty sure that he's going to Rob Pelinka and going to that front office. It's like, look, man, we're gonna have to make some adjustments because this isn't working the way it's going right now.
So you paid I think he has like the third richest contract, will be coming off the bench and not closing games.
Yeah, I think that's the only way to get his attention because the only way to slow him down is to sit him down.
But if you slow him down, do you get him? What is he if you slow him down?
I think that
if you take the ball out of his hands and slow him down,
not necessarily, because here's what I'm thinking. If you put him on the bench and you have LeBron be the facilitator to start the games, and then you bring him in for LeBron, you bring him and Melo in and sit down. Let's say, for example, Melo and Russ come in, and AD, I'm saying when they're completely healthy, AD and LeBron sit down. So you got those two guys working with that second unit, and you're playing against second unit guys where you could be a little more effective and you can get a little more out in transition. You got a little more room to operate because you don't have to necessarily have to get the ball to LeBron or have to get the ball to AD. Melo can catch and shoot. So you could do your thing and slash to the basket and hit Melo on the catch and shoots. So that kind of opens up your game a little more as opposed to him trying to, be that facilitator and trying to get in the paint and try to get AD looks, trying to get LeBron looks. Although, to be fair, he did find LeBron a lot in that first half. He's finding him for some layups, and he got him some really easy shots in that first half. So I do give him credit for that. But I just think it's one of them things that will free him up if they wind up doing that.
I just think the problem you're going to run into is, say that works. Say he starts playing well. Then the argument is, I'm playing well. Why am I not closing games? Why am I not starting? How are you paying me $40 million? I'm playing well, but I'm not starting. I just think I think that's a chemistry issue. And I think the other parts of that tail spins it is now he thinks he has less time and less minutes. So you thought he was going fast before trying to do too much? If he think I'm on a limited, time window, we definitely about to get Russ going crazy when he get in the game.
I think that's what needs to happen is you get him in smaller doses, and he doesn't hurt you as much if you get him in smaller doses. Just a theory.
Yeah, we'll see. But I'm not. I haven't been on the Rush train in a long time. I think we're going to look back at some point, and people never go back and apologize, but I think there's a lot of people that owe KD an apology because he dealt with this for 10 years, and we never thought it was an issue. Everybody blamed him. And the fact that he played with him and was as successful as he was with Russ, I think doesn't get enough credit and respect as we're now seeing Russ on a whole different level. I saw it in Washington. Everybody gave him credit for last year. That team was awful early in the year last year. Like, they went on a nice run. A lot of that was based on other players stepping up. A lot of that was not driven by Russell Westbrook from what I saw when I was watching the games. But we got rid of him, thank God, and now he's LA's problem.
Yeah. I honestly, we'll definitely look back at Russell's career, and he's going to be one of those guys that's just going to be one of the biggest. He'll set off the biggest debates because, there's no in between when it comes to Russ. Either you love him or you can't stand him. I think he's just one of those guys that kind of elicits those responses from people. And honestly, I think what really killed, I shouldn't say killed, but what really hurt Russ is, and you're probably going to think it's kind of funny, but the fact that they got rid of Harden, I think it almost empowered him to a point where it actually wound up hurting him in the long run. Because
you talking about Houston, or what do you mean?
No, when he was in OKC. When they
Okay.
I think that told him that he was the guy over Harden, and it was one of those things that kind of eventually wound up biting him in the behind, because when Harden was there and he started going a little, you could bring Harden in the game. Like, if Russ started getting a little out of control, started doing too much, you had Harden that you could bring in and settle things down. And I think once he left, that kind of just basically took the training wheels off of Russ, and he just went downhill, and he just never slowed. It's one of those avalanches that went downhill, and it was one that never stopped. And I thought, to be honest, like, this was the only way the only way that Russ was going to sacrifice was going to be with the Lakers, and the fact that he really is still just doing Russ, I think that's kind of like the writing on the wall, man. Is that he is who he is, and I don't know if he's ever going to change.
And to your point, I think it was an organizational thing. I think Scotty Brooks was not the guy to hold him accountable. I don't think Kevin Durant was vocal enough to say, Russ, chill out. Management definitely didn't do it. I've seen people criticize the way they handled press conferences and the press when Russ was there. He was coddled this whole time. And so I completely agree with you that I think he came in with a chip on his shoulder coming out of college, because he wasn't super, super highly touted coming out. He wasn't supposed to be.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere.
This guy, out of UCLA, but he performed well. But once they let Serge go, once they let Harden go, and then eventually Durant had to leave, I think all of that was because they saw who he was and what how management felt about him, and nobody would hold him accountable. And Kevin Durant wasn't going to do that because he's never wanted to feel like that's his responsibility or his job. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate, kind of how it's panned out, because he's a phenomenal talent, but he just don't get it. He's not a smart basketball player. And at that position with the ball in your hand that much, you got to make better decisions. The turnovers and issues he's having are like elementary school stuff. Like, he's a professional ball player that's just out there going way too fast. And it just kills momentum. And he don't play defense. I've watched him so many times. People get backdoor layups because he's just not paying attention. And so I think benching him is going to be I would love to be a fly on the wall in that conversation.
Oh, no doubt. So let's try that leads us to our next topic. So do you think the Lakers are going to make the playoffs?
So here's my thing. I can't bring myself to say no, that they won't. But everything that my eyes are telling me tells me they are not a playoff team. The benefit this is the argument that I've had for most of LeBron's career was the East was weak and the West was tough. And I believe it's switched. I think if the Lakers were in the East right now, I definitively would say they ain't going to the playoffs. When I look at the Hawks, the Celtics, the Knicks, all those teams looking outside the playoffs right now, I would definitively say there's no way. But outside of the top 4 teams in the West, everybody's pretty average at best. So I think they'll have a chance to get at that 10 seed. And at that 10 seed, I think there's a bunch of opportunity in a 1 or 2 game playoff for them to beat a San Antonio or Minnesota. So I just think that at 16 and 18, and they're at the 7 seed, I think they'll be okay. And if they could go on any kind of run and get any kind of momentum and get maybe Memphis, I look at Memphis and say, well, they're a better team. But I also look at Memphis and be like, how in the world would Memphis, with that roster, beat LA in a 7-game series? So I think LeBron has just rode the right conference wave at the right time, and I think they will make the playoffs. But I don't think it's because they're good. I just think the conference is really weak.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I think they'll be one of those. They're going to be on that, definitely be on that bottom half of the playoffs, between anywhere from 7 to 10. Anywhere in that range, I think they'll wind up slotting into. All depends on how fast AD is able to get back and if they're able to get back on the right track. But yeah, I'm with you that they'll make the playoffs, but they're not going to be a high seed. Like, out of the highest I think they could probably get, if they really go on a run, is maybe 6. I think that's the best case scenario for them. And it's all going to be on the matchups. I think, to your point, that if they wind up getting into that play-in, I think they can get through that. But in terms of a first-round series, if they get any of those guys on the upper half, if they run into a Golden State, if they run into a Phoenix, like, I don't see any way that they're able to beat those teams. They just don't have enough. I think the biggest thing is defensively. I think that's the biggest problem, is that they just can't stay in front of the ball. Like, they're defensively, they are really bad. And I don't, it's surprising when you got guys like, you got, LeBron is getting up there. AD's always been a really good defender. The White House has always been a really good defender. But then you got a lot of subpar guys. You talked about Russ, Wayne Ellington. He struggles on defense. Melo, he's always struggled on defense. So you got, guys that can guard, and then you got guys that really can't guard. So I think it's one of those things where they got the mesh of talent that they have. On the offensive side, they can really put up points, but they give up as many points as they give up as they put up. So I think they're always going to struggle. And that actually almost leads to our next point, and you kind of talked to it a little bit. So I want to dig into it a little more. Is the East? Why do you say that the East is now better than the West?
I just look at the depth, and real quick, because another point I just want to make, kind of a offshoot.
Yeah, sure.
If the Lakers make the playoffs and they run into the Warriors and lose, I think we need to revisit the Steph LeBron conversation. Steph at that point would have beat LeBron in the playoffs or the final a lot.
Yeah.
And I know LeBron's, LeBron. But when you start looking at that playoff finals record and their head-to-heads,
that's fair.
Like, it does not favor LeBron. And I know LeBron's going to give you the individual stats, but if we're going to kill Russ for putting up individual stats and losses, LeBron doesn't get a pass either.
That's fair.
So if that happens again, I think we got to look at, Steph's hierarchy a whole lot tougher than we have. But back to the conferences, I just look at when I looked at the West and I look at Memphis at the 4, that rest of that conference looks bad. Like there's nobody. Dallas, Minnesota, San Antonio, Portland, Sacramento. Like Portland's 13-19. The Clippers are somehow 17-16. And I think that's just a shout out to Tyronn Lue and the phenomenal coaching job he's doing. And he's not getting enough credit because that team has been, and now Paul George is out for the, I think like 4 weeks, something like that.
Yes.
So just when I look at all that they have done, I just don't see much in the West. Whereas when I go to the East, the Pacers are 14-20, but they're the 13 seed. Like they got talent on that team with LeVert and Sabonis and Turner, and I think Brogdon. They've got talent. It's just really competitive. Boston's at 16-17, and they've been kind of up and down. Charlotte is above 500 at the 8 seed. The Knicks have talent. We saw what they were last year. I just think the East is tough, and we haven't even gotten to what the Bulls are. The Bucks, the Heat, kind of have been quiet, but they're still winning. Washington's tailed off a bit, but they're still there. Cleveland, a lot of people are talking about, but Cleveland's still a 5th seed, even as great as a lot of people think they're playing. I just think the East is a lot deeper. I think there's a lot more talent. I think it's a lot more competitive, and the West just doesn't have that.
Yeah. I think you nailed it. I think the East is just top to bottom. When you said it, the West is top heavy, whereas the East, once you get past it with the West, once you get past that 4, you got a bunch of question marks. You already talked about Clippers. You got the Nuggets, who then Jamal Murray, Minnesota. They're still young, and we don't know what they're going to be. You got questions about the Lakers, Luka. Do they have enough talent in Dallas? Spurs, they're kind of rebuilding, but they're still kind of hanging in there. But when you look at the East, you got Brooklyn, deep talented. Chicago, deep talented. Bucks, deep talented. Heat, deep talented. Cavs, young talented. 76ers, probably got the best big, if arguably the best big in the league. Wizards, who deep talented. Hornets, young, deep talented. Celtics, two young stars on the wings. Even the Raptors and the Knicks have talent. So I just think in terms of the talent levels on the two sides, it's just a vast difference. And it took a long time, but the East has now finally caught up, and they've surpassed the West in terms of top to bottom, because this is almost like how the West used to be, whereas you had teams that I think this may wind up be one of those seasons where there's a team that's a 500 team that doesn't make the playoffs in the East. A 42-40, or a 43-39, that type of 41-41, that type of situation where a 500 team they don't wind up making the playoffs. So I just think that from top to bottom, the East is finally caught up and they surpassed the West. And like you said, LeBron moved to the East, moved to the West at the right time, because they're a little top heavy. So I think it's a great plan.
And I think even with that, you're going to see, once we get to this trade deadline, a whole lot of teams in the East going to be buyers, and a whole lot of teams in the West will be sellers.
Could be, yeah.
I could see Porzingis potentially being on the move. Dame, we've talked about him being on the move. John Wall potentially being on the move. Philly's doing this without Ben Simmons, so they should get better if they do anything at the trade deadline, because getting rid of him would bring something back.
Right.
So I envision the East will even get stronger. The only team that would probably get poached a little bit would be Indiana, but I think a lot of those players might still end up in the East anyway. So I think I guess they don't have the East versus West All-Star games anymore, but I would be curious this year to see how that worked out.
Yeah,
the
that's
West
a great point.
For a long time had been better. Now that they do the little draft or whatever, it's a little different.
Right.
I just think it's good to see. It goes back to almost, it was like in the 90s era when it was the Bulls, the Knicks, the Heat, and all those teams, the Pacers, where the East was kind of tough. And it's a lot of those teams now. the Bulls, the Bucks, the Heat, the Cavs, even the Sixers. There's some gritty teams. They play tough football. It's not tough basketball. So I think we're getting kind of back to that era too, with big men. There's a number of big men. Chicago with Vucevic, Milwaukee has some big men. Miami. So it's just a good era here in the Eastern Conference where they're returning back to their glory, and the fun out west is not what it used to be.
Yeah. I think it's really going to be interesting this trading deadline. What piece? I think it's going to be one of those things. Is what piece is going to put a team over the top, and I think that's what we're going to see in terms of the trading deadline is what piece, who adds that piece that helps them get over the top. Because you know, to your point, is there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the same, record-wise. There's a lot of teams that are jumbled together, even in the East and the West. So that trading deadline is going to be crucial to see which team is going to really improve their roster and be able to make a run in the second half going down the stretch after the All-Star break.
For sure.
Yeah, man. So our last topic of the night is near and dear to my heart because I'm a Knicks fan. Should Tibbs be on the hot seat after Kemba's resurgence? And I'm gonna take this one. I don't know. I don't think he necessarily should be on the hot seat, but he did. He needed to. He needed to see the error of his ways, and I called this one from the jump. When he did it, is that this was a mistake, and he's finally saw the error of his ways, and I think it's one of those things where Tibbs just had to finally admit to himself that, and kind of one of the things where you got to progress and you got to evolve. Like this is not the knockout drag out. This is not the grinded out days of the 90-point games. Like you have to make some concessions because defense is not a premium in the league nowadays. Like you got to have guys on the court that can score. And I just think that he finally realized that. And the Knicks struggle to have playmakers. Like to me, there's no question in terms of between him and Derrick Rose, those are your two best playmakers. So the fact that you didn't have him on the floor was just a mistake at the start of the game. And the fact of the matter is since he's come back, he's been on a mission. He's going on a tear. So he just proved that he was wrong for that. Now, I wouldn't say that he'd necessarily be on the hot seat because they did make a playoff run last year. Now, the question is what happens the rest of the season in terms of, because right now we're on the outside looking in. We're kind of in that we're right outside that play-in situation. So I think the question is how things play out over the second half of the season. Now, if things wind up to where we don't make the playoffs or we get knocked out in a play-in tournament, then maybe there's some questions start to be asked about Tibbs. But I think right now I think he's safe. He's not on the hot seat just yet. He just made an error in judgment and he corrected it. And so now he has to, to mend the mistake that he made to kind of fix the relationship or repair the relationship with him and Kemba. But I don't think he's on the hot seat just yet. What do you think?
Now I disagree, and I think that's why I disagree. What we talked about last topic, I think the East is very, very competitive, and that 2 weeks, 3 weeks when he benched Kemba, it changed the whole trajectory of their season, and he's solely responsible, as far as I can tell, for that. I think they would be in a much better position based on what we've seen had they stuck with Kemba. And they're now on the outside looking in. I do agree with you. If they go on a run, it'll probably be water under a bridge. And I think the way Kemba handled it makes it a lot easier for him because a lot of people would have felt the way and probably handled it.
For sure.
Could have handled it differently. So I think he did it to the right one. So that'll work in his favor. And then if they can get in the playoffs, I think that'll also work in his favor. But if they end up missing the playoffs by, a couple games, I think management has to look really hard at that decision in the middle, early in the year, costing them a berth in the playoffs. And when they do those exit interviews, I think that'll also go a long way as to how players responded to that time frame and, kind of what else comes from it. But I definitely think it put a microscope on him that he didn't need, where he thought he was trying to be, I guess, outsmart people, and it definitely backfired. I will also say I give him a ton of credit for acknowledging the error of his ways and not being stubborn and sticking to his guns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he realized he was wrong, and he made the adjustment rather quickly. I don't think he had a lot of choice based on how bad they were playing. But I do give him, I guess, some respect for saying, yeah, I screwed this up and doing what he could to try and fix it.
Yeah, I think your point is really important in terms of how they finish. Like, if it's determined or something happens to where they wind up missing the playoffs, and that was what a stretch of, I think it was like 9 or 10 games, like that swing, that'll definitely be looked at in terms of Tibbs taking a really bad hit. So the pressure is really on him now. I will say that he may not be on a hot seat per se, but there's pressure on him. But that they have to make the playoffs, because if they don't make the playoffs, he's definitely going to catch. He's going to catch heat for that, because that stretch will be looked at as the reason as to why they didn't make the playoffs. So I think I think you have a valid point there in terms of what he would be pressure for. That would cause, I don't know if it necessarily cause a hot seat, but it would definitely it will put some heat on him. I'll say that.
Cool.
I'll say that. All right, so we reached the end of our show tonight. Thanks you guys for joining us. Me and Ray held it down for the crew tonight. I'm sure they'll be back on Thursday. Hopefully, Freddie has come out of his depression.
I know Freddie been ducking some shows these days because his team's down bad.
Yeah, it's a tough time to be a fan in terms of Freddie. The Giants stink. The Lakers are struggling. They're looking really bad. So, his only salvation is right now is Aaron Rodgers and his other team, the Packers are. And God help him if they wind up losing, then he'll just really be miserable.
If the Packers can go out in the first round, I think they'll get
forget about it.
But if they can go out in that first game, that would be great.
Man, and don't let the Cowboys make a run. We might not see him until summer.
Yeah, you're right.
My gosh, because you won't hear the end of my mouth. I will make life miserable for him. Oh my goodness. But yeah, we'll be back on Thursday, guys. And so, again, appreciate you for tuning in. This is Real Talk. So on behalf of myself and Ray, thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace.
Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. Whole sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation.